And we are back, and unfortunately for the third week running, I now must do a Premier League prediction the Friday morning after an incredibly disappointing display on Thursday night from my club, Manchester United. But such is the way of football when it gets to the business end of the season. But I have recomposed myself. We are ready to go for another pivotal week up and down the table. Obviously, the table now looks a lot more secure for certain teams. It looks like Manchester City have wrapped up the league title. It looks like Newcastle have secured Champions League football for next season. It almost looks like Manchester United have secured Champions League football with the door slightly ajar. And the picture at the bottom is looking a lot clearer for some teams, but not for others. It is now, of course, game week 34, so just 5 weeks left of the season. It's all coming down to the very end, and let's see what we'll be going for in this game week. One more thing before we get into it. This is a double game week. There are three extra matches consisting of 6 teams playing twice. This video will just be for the opening 10 fixtures running up till Tuesday, and then Wednesday morning I will do a separate video for the 3 remaining games of this game week. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on part 2 of this week. Now let's get in to the weekend's action, and we start off with Crystal Palace up against West Ham. Two sides that have reasonably jumped away from the relegation zone but aren't quite safe yet. I think whichever team does get the win this weekend will be safe. And I also think probably that both of these teams will be safe. The way that they've both respectively played since they've been in the relegation battle, and obviously since Roy Hodgson's taken over at Crystal Palace, they've both played well enough to get away from the relegation zone. And to be honest, I can't really split them right now. This is a really tight one to call. Like I say, both teams are playing well, but both teams have had slight blips in their last couple of games. So I'm just going to go for a 1-1 draw in this one and say that it will be mutually beneficial for both teams to get one more point towards safety, as I think both of them will do so. On to the 3 o'clock kickoffs, and we kick off with Brentford and Nottingham Forest. Forest off the back of a fantastic win against Brighton, and Brentford off the back of yet another impressive win, this time away at Chelsea. So another tough one to call. Obviously, Forest are fighting for their lives. Brentford are still in the race for European places, albeit Europa, not Champions League. But I think Brentford will get the result in this one. They are playing some fantastic football once again. And I'm going to go for 2-1. Forest have looked a lot better in the last couple of games. I expect them to do some damage to Brentford, but not enough to get a result. On to Brighton and Wolves. And I spoke about it yesterday in my post-match reaction to Manchester United Tottenham. But Brighton have had a real wobble in the last week or so. Obviously, the defeat to Manchester United in the FA Cup was a huge disappointment for them. But to back it up with a really poor display against Nottingham Forest is not a good look for them. And they'll be looking for a response in this one. But Wolves are playing some fantastic football at the moment. They'll still believe that they need to pick up more points if they're going to stay up in the Premier League. And I don't know, I've just got this really weird feeling that Wolves are going to get something from this game, and I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. Now, that may surprise a lot of people. I think a lot of people are going to expect Brighton to take this one relatively comfortably, but I have to look at recent performances and say Brighton have been poor and Wolves have been really good. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw, and we'll see what happens in that one. Next up, it is Bournemouth taking on Leeds in an absolutely humongous game at the bottom of the Premier League table. Leeds have to get the win. Bournemouth have to just avoid defeat, in my opinion. The results they've picked up in the last few weeks have been incredible for them. They sit in a very nice points tally at the moment, whereas Leeds sit in desperate trouble. So Leeds will obviously give it everything they've got, but I think Bournemouth have just hit their stride and they've got it just working the way Gary O'Neill wants it to at the moment. And I'm going to back them to carry on that good run of form by picking up a 2-0 win over Leeds United, which will see Leeds move into real danger of going down and will all but see Bournemouth secure their place in the Premier League for next season. On to Fulham and Manchester City, and as well as Fulham have played in the last couple of games without Alexander Mitrovic, I just think the Manchester City machine just keeps rolling on. And that's no disrespect to Fulham at all. It's just Manchester City, when they hit this point of the season, when it clicks, when it's flowing, there's not really any team in world football that can stop them unless Pep does something bizarre in the Champions League like he normally does. I'm going to go for a 3-0 win to Manchester City. I don't think anyone's going to be too surprised with that. or if that is the actual scoreline. So Manchester City take this one 3-0 in my opinion. On to Manchester United and Aston Villa, and depending on the way this result goes, it is a pivotal game because Manchester United, kind of like with the Spurs game last night, if they avoid defeat against Aston Villa, it just pushes the other teams down a little bit. Obviously, there's still the threat of Liverpool and Tottenham, who are, of course, playing each other in a prediction coming up. But as long as Manchester United avoid defeat, top four hopes seem all but secure. I'm going to actually back my team to get the win. I know Aston Villa have been fantastic, and I know I've spoken a lot about Aston Villa over the last few weeks about how impressed I've been with them under Unai Emery. But I think at Old Trafford, with the crowd behind us, I think we do get the win in this one. I'm going to go for the same prediction I went for last night. I'm going to go for 2-1 to Manchester United. Of course, my concern is that we don't perform in that second half, as I spoke about in last night's video. But at home to Aston Villa, we should be winning this game. And if we don't, then that's where the worries will start to really start ramping up about our top four chances. Speaking of top four chances, we then move on to Newcastle United, who, as I said earlier, are basically already there against a side in Southampton who are basically already down. And that's where I'm going with that prediction. I'm going to go for 4-1 to Newcastle. I don't think I need to say too much more about it. I would like to give Newcastle the clean sheet because of how well they have done defensively this season, but they just keep seeming to leak one goal a game at the moment. So given the fact that Southampton will surely be giving it everything, they still got to believe that even after that home defeat to Bournemouth, they've got to look at that game against Arsenal last week and think we can get results away at the big teams. So I'm going to give Southampton a goal, but the way Newcastle are playing at the moment, in particularly the likes of Isak, Wilson, Willock and Joelinton, I just don't see Southampton doing anything to stop them getting an easy win. On to what is arguably the highest profile game of the weekend, if not potentially the biggest game of the weekend. I'm going to suggest the one after that is a bigger one. But we have Luton next season, hopefully. Liverpool taking on Tottenham Hotspur in a game that could be pivotal to the top four race, depending on how that previous game between Manchester United and Aston Villa goes. Two sides that, with mixed sort of momentum and form. Liverpool, obviously off the back of 3 consecutive wins, now have 3 consecutive home games, so it's looking very good for Liverpool right now. And of course, they have all of their key forwards back again. Tottenham are going to be feeling a little bit better after their comeback last night, but maybe not fully all the way there because they were still rubbish in the first half and were still not able to get the job completely done against Manchester United last night. They travel to Anfield, which is never an easy place to go, even this season when Liverpool haven't been at their best. I think this is going to be a very, very entertaining game. Both sides give away loads of chances, so it's just going to be a case of who takes the more chances. And based on form over the last few weeks, I have to say Liverpool will end up taking more chances. So I'm going to go for 4-2 to Liverpool. I think this is going to be a very high-scoring game in before it's 0-0. But that's what I'm going for. 4-2 to Liverpool. They will put their position as the strongest one going into the run-in for Champions League places. Now for the game that I think is the biggest game of the weekend, which is the Monday Night Football between Leicester and Everton. And depending on the way this result goes, I think you will see one or both teams potentially relegated off the back of this result. Both teams have to win. Neither can afford to draw or lose. And both teams are playing pretty shambolic at the moment, so it's very hard to place which way this one's going to go. I have to look at the fact that Maddison's fit again, Barnes is fit again, Vardy finally scored for the first time in months against Leeds, and Leicester were arguably unlucky not to get the win in that second half against Leeds. Everton just look like their heads have gone. The initial period of Sean Dyche coming in and solidarity, I can't even speak properly today, making them solid once again, just seems to have fizzled out. And I just think that Leicester are going to get this one, which will see them step out of the relegation zone and see Everton step in for a very, very tough run-in. I'm going to go 3-1 Leicester, and we shall see what happens. But for me, this will be where Leicester make their statement to get away and Everton fall into serious problems. Finally, we have a Tuesday night game for the weekend fixtures. I don't quite know why they've pushed this game so far back, but it is Arsenal against Chelsea in the final game of the first part of Gameweek 34. Chelsea off the back of 5 straight defeats since Frank Lampard took over Arsenal, obviously off the back of 3 consecutive draws and then the humiliating defeat from Manchester City. I still think the way Chelsea are playing at the moment, Arsenal will fancy this one very easily. I expect them, now that sort of the title is gone and the pressure is now off them, they can go back to playing freely and expressing themselves, and that's what I expect them to do. I'm going to go for 3-0 to the Gunners. I don't think Chelsea have a lot to stand on right now, and if it wasn't for the fact that the teams below them probably can't quite scrape enough points together, there is definitely a possibility that Chelsea could potentially lose all their remaining games, which would see them finish the season on 39 points. But I think that will just be enough to keep them up. I can't see Chelsea getting relegated, even if they lose all of their remaining games. But if they continue to, it could get a little bit spicy depending on how these remaining fixtures go for the other teams in and around them. But that is going to be it for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. As always, I will be back tomorrow morning with my fantasy football team for this upcoming game week. Thank you very much for watching once again. I'll see you then.